Hey guys, this is Zoe, also known as Green Mom Zoe on YouTube or Ripple Maker Zoe on Twitter. Today I'm dedicating my video to the 20th anniversary of the fall of communism in Eastern Europe, and more specifically in my native country of Bulgaria. It was exactly 20 years ago on November 10th, 1989, that the Bulgarian Communist Party was brought down from power and the Bulgarian people finally began their journey towards establishing their first democratic state. So it was a huge historic event for those of us who lived there, and today I want to share a little bit about my first count experience of November 10th, 1989, as well as tell you a few interesting stories about my life in communist Bulgaria, because I would believe that you'll find them very fascinating and very insightful into why November 10th was such a huge victory for the Bulgarian people. So let the journey begin. So, what was life in communist Bulgaria like, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you, pretty black and white. Let's start with the TV. There were only two TV channels, Channel 1 and Channel 2. And usually the TV channels started around 5 o'clock in the afternoon and they ended around 12 o'clock midnight. So between 5 and 12 o'clock was the only time you can watch TV. And the TV pretty much consisted of children programming, the news, some kind of a movie, which was usually a boring movie, and then some other programming that was also boring. So there was no daytime TV, no soap operas, no reality television, no variety, no colors. Oh yeah, and let's not forget that every Friday night was the so-called Soviet Admiration Night. So all the news, all the movies, all the broadcasting came directly from the Soviet Union. It was all in Russian, never translated in Bulgarian. So all we saw was propaganda about the Soviet Union. Next, I'd like to discuss transportation in communist Bulgaria. And that's an interesting topic because in comparison to America today, when the average household has at least 2 vehicles at hand, and sometimes actually 3 or 4 for every member of the family, in communist Bulgaria, very few people had cars. And usually you had to be on a waiting list to wait years and years until you can be entitled to buy a car. The cars that you could buy were only from the USSR, so there was no Western cool vehicles like Mercedes-Benz or BMW or Ford. And the other thing is that most people that bought cars usually had some kind of connection to the Communist Party. So they had like a family member that was a member of the Communist Party, or they had someone else that was a member, so that kind of expedited the process of getting a car. So for most of us, we simply walked. We walked anywhere. And that was not just in the summer, that was in the winter, that was in the snow, that was in the bad weather. We had no other choice. So I want to tell you that today I never take my warm, cozy ride for granted. Oh, I love my BlackBerry phone. I don't even know how I can live without it. But I also remember a different time in communist Bulgaria. Up until 1986, not many people had any phones in their households. Actually, my parents didn't. If we needed to make a phone call, we had to walk to the nearest public phone and make a phone call from there. Doesn't matter whether you're sick, whether you're dying, whether it's cold, whether it's impossible for you to walk, that was the only way to make a phone call. And what about healthcare? I mean, in communist Bulgaria, you can assume already all the healthcare was free and accessible for all. I mean, if you needed a doctor's appointment, a procedure, a surgery, a birth, whatever your problem was, you simply go to the local hospital and they would take care of it. There was no doctor's offices. It was all located in the hospital. So all the specialists, all the surgeons, all the pediatricians, everybody was in the hospital. And when you go to the hospital, you go and take a number, and then you just wait for your turn to go and visit the doctor. Now, I can't say it was the greatest because sometimes the healthcare was really poor and really hard to get to, but I can tell you that it had its plus and its minuses. And as far as the Western world went, well, we didn't really have much influence of the Western world at all. As you know, there was the Iron Curtain separating Eastern Europe from Western Europe, and there were very few and selected pieces of movies or music or food or politics allowed into Eastern Europe. So everything that we were exposed to was highly censored, highly edited. It was always propaganda, and it always portrayed the West as evil, as the bad guys. So when it comes to even speaking your mind or expressing disagreement with the government, Americans don't understand how good they have it here. I'll never forget when the Berlin Wall came down, and all the news coverage in Bulgaria was talking about it, and there was so much excitement, so much elation, so many people were just like energized by that. I remember I was 10 years old at the time, and I heard the news first on the National Public Radio announcing that there's no more Communist Party in Bulgaria, and to hear about the Berlin Wall and about the movement of all the people in Eastern Germany going over the border to Western Germany. And then I remember just saying like, wow, what an amazing time in history I'm living in. To those of you that have never seen the fall of communism or experienced it, I can only tell you that it was like a great awakening. It was like we were asleep and all of a sudden we woke up. We realized how much we were oppressed, how much we were censored, how much we were prevented from being who we really wanted to be. We realized the price of freedom and how many people lost their lives or their freedoms to fight for us to live in a free democratic society today in Bulgaria. And it's fascinating to know that that change in Eastern Europe didn't come so much from the older generations, but from the new generations, from the young people, from the students. They were the ones that brought the change in Bulgaria. They were the ones that said, we cannot wait anymore for anyone else to come and bring us freedom. We're going to go and fight for it. And it kind of reminds me of what happened in Iran over the summer with the elections and all the people that were on the streets protesting. I can totally relate to that because this is how it was in Bulgaria. It really hit home when I was watching the Iranian people this summer fighting for the very same basic freedoms as we were. And I hope that someday they will win too, as we did. My grandfather on my mom's side, he was outspoken opponent of the Communist Party, and he always listened to Radio Free Europe back then, and it was prohibited. If you were listening to Radio Free Europe or any other alternative media sources, I mean, you were to be prosecuted and fined and maybe thrown in jail in some cases. So my grandfather had to do it very quietly, very secretively. And my grandfather took me to political rallies for the first free elections. We went to this big election rally for Zhelev, who was the first democratic president of Bulgaria. It was just such an amazing experience for me to see as a child, and influenced the way I saw politics later on in life. It explains why I'm so outspoken today and why I always look for alternative media sources to get my news and not just listen to mainstream media. Today, 20 years later, the way this change impacted me would be something that would define me as a person, as a citizen of this world, because I would never take oppression from anyone. I would never have anyone tell me what to do, how to do it, what to read, how to read it, what to be exposed to. I am a free person and I determine my own future, and that's thanks to the change on November 10th, 1989. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you learned something interesting, and feel free to leave some of your feedback. Thank you.